Horses followed him like an old friend. He'd spent the whole day mending fences on the south pasture, the kind of work that kept a man quiet and gave his mind too much room to wander. For 3 years, he'd been living that way, quiet, solitary, just him and the land. Once, there had been noise in his life, laughter, supper around the table, a woman's hum as she worked. But since the accident that took his wife and their unborn child, the silence had swallowed him whole. Folks in town said Eli Turner had gone half wild. Maybe they were right. As he neared the ranch gate, he saw a thin man on a buckboard waiting by the corral. The man tipped his hat, revealing a wrinkled face and sorrowful eyes. It was Sheriff Amos Reed. "Even in, Eli," the sheriff said. "Even in, Amos," Eli replied, dismounting. "What brings you out this way?" Amos hesitated, his hand tightening on his reins. "I wouldn't trouble you unless I had to, but there's a young woman in town, needs help." Her pa was Tom Callahan. Eli's head lifted sharply. Tom Callahan, that's right, he passed 2 months back. His daughter came in from St. Louis after the funeral, but things didn't go well. She's been in a bad crowd. Says she wants to go back to her father's old ranch, but it's been abandoned a long time. She's got no money, no ride, and half the town's done turned their backs. Eli rubbed his jaw. Tom Callahan had been his closest friend once, before they quarreled. Years ago, Tom's daughter, Clara, had left for the city against her father's wishes. Rumor said she never wrote him again. Now she was back, and Tom was gone. Amos watched Eli's face carefully. "I figured you'd want to know. Tom spoke kindly of you at the end. Said if anything ever happened to him, he hoped you'd keep an eye on the girl." Eli said nothing for a long while. Then he nodded slowly. "All right." In at first late, by the time he reached Dry Creek, the sun had barely risen. The town was stirring awake, the blacksmith hammering, the saloon doors swinging. He tied his horse outside the boarding house and stepped inside. The keeper, Mrs. Jenks, gave him a sharp look. "You here for the Callahan girl?" "That's right, she's upstairs, room 3. Don't expect much conversation. Girl's been through the ringer." Eli climbed the creaky stairs and knocked. "Go away," came a faint voice. He opened the door anyway. The room smelled of dust and stale perfume. By the window sat a young woman in a torn traveling dress, her auburn hair tangled, her eyes distant and hollow. "Clara," he said softly. She turned, blinking. "Do I know you? I was your father's friend, Eli Turner." For a moment, her expression flickered with something like recognition. "Pa mentioned you," she murmured. "Said you two built half that ranch together. Guess you heard he's gone." "I did," Eli said. "I'm sorry for it." She looked away, her eyes filling. "We hadn't spoken in 5 years. I came back too late." Eli studied her, the city polish still faintly clinging beneath the dirt and weariness. "Sheriff said you wanted to go back to your father's land." She gave a weak laugh. "What for? The house is falling down, the fields are dead. There's nothing left there for me." "Maybe not, but there's nothing here for you either." Her eyes met his, fragile, uncertain. "Why would you help me?" He hesitated, then said quietly, "Because your father asked me to, once." They rode out before noon. Clara hadn't been on a horse in years, and her first few miles were clumsy. Eli rode beside her in silence, guiding her when the road grew rough. The plains opened wide ahead of them, endless and golden beneath the sky. At first she didn't speak, but as the hours passed, something in her began to loosen. "I thought the city would be freedom," she said finally. "I was tired of dust and chores. I wanted to see lights, music, men who didn't smell like horses." She gave a humorless laugh. "But it wasn't what I thought. The lights go out, and you realize you're just another lost soul." Eli glanced at her. "You make some bad friends." "Worse," she said softly. "Made bad choices. I was, with a man who promised me everything. When the money ran out, he left. I barely made it back here." Eli didn't press. Her voice trembled with shame, and he understood what it meant to carry ghosts. As they crested the hill that overlooked the old Callahan ranch, Clara stopped. The house below was half collapsed, roof caving in, weeds crawling over the porch. A lonely wind whistled through the broken fence. Her breath hitched. "He built that with his own hands," she whispered. "And I left him to die alone." Eli dismounted, walking beside her horse. "You can't change what's done," he said quietly. "But you can start again." "He'd want that," she nodded, wiping her eyes. They spent the first night in the house, sleeping on bedrolls near the hearth. The roof leaked, but Eli fixed what he could. In the morning, he showed her how to draw water from the old well, how to patch a window, how to plant seed. She worked beside him without complaint. Days turned into weeks. Slowly, the ranch began to breathe again. Fields trimmed, fences mended, the scent of baking bread drifting from the kitchen. Clara's hands grew calloused, her skin sun-browned. The city woman was fading, replaced by someone stronger, quieter. Sometimes at dusk, she'd watch Eli from the porch as he worked with the horses. He never spoke much, but there was a steadiness in him she'd never seen in any man before. One evening, as they sat by the fire, she said, "I used to think strength was about fighting for what you want. But now I think it's about staying when things get hard." Eli looked at her across the flames. "Your father used to say the same thing." She smiled faintly. He was right. But peace never stays long on the frontier. One afternoon, 2 riders appeared on the ridge. Clara saw them first. One of them she recognized instantly. Her face went pale. "Eli," she whispered. "It's him." The man leading the riders was Samuel Hart, slick city gambler, once her lover. He dismounted with a grin. "Well, if it isn't my darling Clara. Didn't think I'd find you out here." Eli stepped forward. "You're not welcome on this land." Samuel smirked. "Land, this heap of dirt, I came for what's mine." "You've got nothing here," Eli said evenly. Samuel's hand dropped to his gun belt. "She owes me money, and more than that. She ran out on me, took what wasn't hers." Clara shook her head. "I took nothing." Eli's hand hovered near his revolver. "You should go before you regret it." Samuel sneered. "You think you can scare me, cowboy?" He went for his gun. The shot cracked through the stillness, echoing off the hills. Samuel froze, eyes wide. The weapon dropped from his hand as he crumpled to the ground. His partner fled without looking back. Eli lowered his smoking gun. His face was calm, but his hands trembled slightly. Clara stared at the man lying motionless in the dirt, then at Eli. You saved my life." He holstered his revolver. "You don't owe me anything." Tears welled in her eyes. "But I do. You brought me back when I was lost." The sheriff came the next morning to take the body away. It was ruled self-defense, and no one in town questioned it. But for days afterward, the air around the ranch felt heavy. Clara barely spoke. Eli gave her space, knowing grief took its own path. Then one evening, she came to him as he sat mending a saddle. "I've been thinking," she said softly. "Maybe I'll stay. There's work here, and peace. And maybe I could make this place something again." Eli looked up at her, meeting her steady gaze. "You don't have to decide now. I already have." She smiled faintly. "You rescued me, Eli. Not just from him, from the city, from myself. I was lost, and you showed me how to live again." He looked away, his throat tightening. "You rescued yourself, Clara. I just gave you a horse to ride." The last light of sunset spilled across her face, catching the warmth in her hair. "Maybe," she said softly, "but I think I'll stay anyway." The seasons turned, the land grew green again, wheat rippling like water across the fields. Together, they rebuilt the house, painted the porch, and planted wildflowers where Tom Callahan's grave rested beneath the hill. Some nights, when the wind was gentle and the stars were clear, Clara would sit beside Eli on the porch, their hands brushing, neither of them speaking. Words weren't needed. He'd rescued the estranged daughter from the city, but in truth, she'd rescued him too. From loneliness, from silence, from the emptiness that had ruled his days. And as the crickets sang across the fields, Eli Turner realized something he hadn't felt in years. Home wasn't a place, it was the person who'd found her way back to it.